Say you've just been killed by one of Yharnam's many sinister-looking bagmen. If this is the first time, have no fear. It's not too much of a punishment, you'll lose your echoes, but you will in fact discover an area of the game before you're actually meant to discover it. It is, of course, Yahagul, the Unseen Village. Now, of course, this version is a little bit different to how you are meant to encounter it later on in the game. Hence more bagmen, fewer high-level enemies around, but a few nice little secrets here and there, and an NPC. However, there is one other thing here as well that you discover on either playthrough round, which is of course the optional boss, Darkbeast Paarl. Darkbeast Paarl is a boss that takes a little bit of preparation for, not because he's too hard, but just because if you get the right gear, you've got the right kind of weaponry, he can be, not simplified, but a lot of trouble can be sorted out. For this video, I would heavily recommend either a blunt weapon, such as the Kirk Hammer, or if you're a late game, something like the Boom Hammer, or the Circular Saw, the Whirligig Saw, if you have those, of course. And armor-wise, no other set comes close to Henrik's Hunter Garb for this fight because of the excellent lightning resistance it provides, because as you can see, this guy likes his lightning. So as we're going to start off, this fella is exceptionally vulnerable on his head. And when I say vulnerable, I mean he's in a good 3 or 4 good heavy swings in, and you can stagger him, causing him to temporarily lose his lightning buff. So like I say, go for the head as much as possible. If you get the opportunity, strike his legs, by all means, you get a bit of extra damage in, but majority of the damage I would recommend going for the head. It's a weak spot, you can stagger him for a good few cheap extra hits, and if you can stagger him once or twice, you can get a very easy visceral attack, where he'll telegraph it, where his head will loll about a bit on the floor, and you can grab hold of it and basically butt-fuck his eye, to put it in simpler terms. So yes, this fella, lots of cleave attacks. I'm going to recommend being very, very careful. Try get under him as much as possible. Don't stay in front of him. If you're under him, it's a lot easier to avoid his cleave attacks. If you're in front of him, they are more likely to hit, even whilst you're dodge rolling. And of course, the later on in the fight you get, the extra effects added to the cleave attack. As you can see then, he was doing a kind of fetal position move. This is a very easy to spot telegraph for when he's going to do his lightning explosion. I would recommend not going for the head here when he's doing it, simply because it's not a one-hit kill move, but it takes off a sizable portion of health, regardless of the Henrik's Hunter set. So yeah. However, I would recommend, if you're brave enough and you can get enough damage in on him, that after you've got a few swings at his head before he does the explosion, as he is doing there, I would recommend maybe trying to hit him in the face, just because you might be able to get that stagger off, like I mentioned. Hitting his head staggers him quite a bit. So yeah, it's a good opportunity to attack if you're sure you can stagger him. As you see there, he was already a few hits on the head, so 1 or 2 hits extra was all I needed to get him to do it. Now, like I said, I did recommend that you use the Boom Hammer, but as you can see here, I have a little bit of trouble using it because, you know, it's a very slow weapon. It's very deliberate. You've got to make sure you land your hit. Obviously, you've got to make sure you land your hits, but because, of course, it's got that buff that only lasts for 1 hit before you've got to re-add it. Of course, you want to make sure you're very good with your swings, and unfortunately this guy is rather fast, so it doesn't necessarily work as well against him as some of the other blunt weapons. Anything that does extra damage to beasts though will work as just effective, because, you know, anything with beast in the title, like Darkbeast Paarl, generally tends to take more damage from sawtooth weaponry such as the saw cleaver, saw spear, so on and so forth. Anything serrated will do extra damage to beasts, as you're about to see in a few seconds when I decide, screw this, I'm going for my hammer, not my hammer, my Whirligig Saw. Now, as the fight goes on, as I mentioned earlier on, a lot of his cleaves, they get extra attacks. As you can see, those little lightning bolts come out. Like I said, they don't do too much damage thanks to the Hunter's set I'm wearing. They do a little bit extra, just slightly enough, but Henrik's Hunter set, nice insurance. On top of that, a lot of his slam attacks will get an added AoE explosion, which, again, it's not a definite one-hit kill, but it hurts when it can hurt, and it can be annoying if you get staggered and then he starts diving towards you whilst you're trying to recover and heal. So just try your best to avoid them. Like I say, stay under this fella. The only real problem with being under him is that due to the fact that the majority of his body mass is actually raised into the air, and because he's pretty much a skeleton with fur still clinging to it, it can be quite easy to miss a few strikes against this fella. So just be prepared for a few of your strikes not to connect, and just try to stay under him for as long as possible, and then of course, you know, try to avoid the fetal position lightning blast. As you can see there, you know, a lot of his slams when he gets later on in the battle. They have, like I mentioned, the big AoE explosion sending out little arcs of electricity. So yeah, he's not too difficult. He's not one of the most difficult bosses in the game. It's more one of those bosses that's is difficult to start off with, because he psychologically affects you to think, oh Jesus, big fast monster, this is terrifying, and you're not on your A game. Whereas he's a boss that actually encourages a confident, aggressive, obviously a lot of bosses in Bloodborne too, but a confident, aggressive play style, and you should have him on the back foot. Just be very careful with your positioning, because this is a boss who's very good at getting you backed against walls and just absolutely wrecking you whilst you're stuck. Or as well, be careful when he's cornered. As you saw earlier on in the video, I had him cornered and you get a good few swings on him, because when he's cornered there's a lot less room for you to avoid him. So yep, as I mentioned, lightning resistant Henrik's Hunter's Garb, serrated weapons or blunt weapons, anything that can basically do heavy mauling damage is nice. If you're a late game player, Whirligig Saw, wonderful. If you're not, anything like Hunter's Saw, Cleaver, the Hunter's Axe, or even the Kirk Hammer can work just as efficiently. Hope these tips help, and I'll be seeing you in the next video. Ciao.